Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on this fabulous AMA between CoinMetro and Kadena. We're going to talk a little bit about Wrapped Kadena on the Ether network, which is launching imminently on CoinMetro. I'm sure the first question we're going to get is when, W-E-N, of course, because why would someone spell it correctly? But before we do that, we'll do a quick intro. I'm going to have Will from Kadena do a quick intro, and then I'll do a quick intro as well. We'll talk a little bit about why we're here, what Wrapped Kadena is, and then we'll jump into questions because I'm sure that's going to take up the vast majority of our time today. So go ahead, Will, you take it first, a little intro, let them know who you are.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me back or doing this again. I guess the last one, I can't remember if it was on ours or not. I'm Juan Martino. I'm the president and co-founder of Kadena. Background in crypto, started at the SEC. I helped to found their cryptocurrency working group. I was their tech lead when Valerie started it, because they were doing high frequency trading analytics, and then went to JP Morgan and helped to start their blockchain center for excellence, built their first blockchain. And my co-founder Stuart Popejoy there. And then we left and founded Kadena back in 2016. And man, it's been a while now. And Kadena is it's a base layer protocol, layer one, proof of work. The main kind of core feature of it, well, there's a few, but the two main ones are first that we figured out how to actually scale a base layer currency in production. This is through the weirdness of proof of work actually allows us to have multiple chains in the same network. So right now we run a 20 chain network. And the cool part of proof of work also is that when it gets congested, we'll be able to expand it to be 50 chains or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000, depending on what the needs of the network are, we can grow to meet them. And this is a first in the industry. We've been running for about 2 years now. And on top of that runs Pact, which is a very blockchain app focused smart contract language for building safe and reliable applications. It has a bunch of features in it. Among them, the main ones for DeFi especially are, it has formal verification built in. So not only can you write code that is human legible, it's designed to be very simple. It's actually designed for a lawyer who doesn't have a technical background to be able to read, if not also write. But you can also, using that same simple language, ascribe properties to your contract. So you could say, for example, that you want to formally mathematically prove that you can't create or destroy coins, so no minting and burning, or that there aren't double spend issues or a host of other things. And you describe these properties, and Pact will take that and it will compile your code into math, and it will compile your properties into other math, and then it will search the entire space of possible inputs and outputs and actually find logical errors inside of your code. And this for DeFi is going to be hugely, hugely advantageous. So I'll leave it there. And yeah.
That was a good intro. Haven't met a lawyer yet who can read Solidity. So that's a good point.
I can't read Solidity.
Yeah, I don't want to read Solidity. I think it's probably the main point. Funny, you mentioned SEC and JP Morgan, which I think to many people are probably like the evildoers of the financial world. But coming from two places that have vast amounts of experience, whether it be on the legal side or just the regulator side of everything finance, versus one of the largest banking institutions in the world, who obviously has been dipping their toes into blockchain and crypto for quite some time, regardless of what Mr. Diamond says, publicly. Definitely very interesting. One of the things that had put my eyes onto Kadena, and one of the reasons why we had the initial call to discuss working together, and I'm glad we did. So my name is Kevin Murcko. I'm CEO of CoinMetro. CoinMetro is just an awesome exchange that works with awesome businesses like Kadena. We do a lot of other stuff, but today really isn't about us. It's about talking about Wrapped Kadena and why Wrapped Kadena, and then fielding questions from all of you out there that want to ask questions about Wrapped Kadena. Again, when Wrapped Kadena is probably going to be the first one, but we'll wait till we get it and to make that announcement. So let's have a quick discussion about what Wrapped Kadena is. I mean, you made a really good, Will, you made a really good intro onto what Kadena is and why it's here, what it does, and why it's better than some of the other competitors out there in terms of protocols. Let's talk a little bit about why Wrapped Kadena, and why we're going down this path in the first place. So if you can start us off, and I'll chime in afterwards.
Sure. So being able to bridge coins and liquidity across protocols is important. I think the whole industry agrees on this point. And being able to do it in a safe way is even more important. And I don't think the industry agreed with that this time last year. And then after the summer of Wrecked, I think that they rather more agree with it now. Being able to bridge between protocols is difficult to do in a safe and a decentralized way. And the solution that we are going with Kadena as our first bridging effort, which is Wrapped, is to have a centralized provider that is actually doing the movement of coins across chains, so that you know that your coins are safe and secure. They're locked up in CoinMetro. They're locked up with Wrapped. It's not running through some decentralized thing that if it gets undermined, no one can stop it. No one can go get the coins. We've seen Polygon get hacked on numerous occasions.
We've seen everybody get hacked, basically.
We've seen everyone get hacked on numerous occasions. It's just safer. So that is at the core. That's what it is. It's so that major institutions, but also just like larger individuals, can move large sums between these two chains. And it begins with Wrapped KDA, and then we'll eventually go into Wrapped BTC and ETH. And the long-term vision of this is that we'll be able to have automated market makers and DeFi running on top of Kadena, which, because of the way the protocol works, one of the core themes is that if you can scale, gas fees don't need to be high. Gas needs to be just high enough so that you don't have someone who's spamming your network, but no higher than that. And that cost is maybe pennies a transaction, maybe at most $1, but probably pennies, if not less. And that changes DeFi dramatically. If you have a network that, as it begins to get adoption, Binance Smart Chain is a great example. They put it out there as effectively like a private Ethereum clone that was faster and had super low gas fees. They said, oh, come build DeFi on our platform. And then it got clogged because it is still a single chain blockchain. And even if it's some finite speed faster, it still got clogged. Most of the layer protocols that we see today, even the ones that are quote unquote scalable, they're just more scaled. They're faster by a lot, but that only means that you then see your adoption increase to that point, and then it gets clogged, and then the gas fees go up, and then all of a sudden DeFi starts tearing its hair out again and saying, why do I have to pay $30,000 a transaction? So the vision is that we do Wrapped, we have a bridge, we're able to start bringing liquidity and go back and forth between Ethereum and Kadena. And then from there, we can start to really get DeFi moving on Kadena and be able to show that, yes, we have figured out scaling, and this is what DeFi looks like when you don't have to worry about gas fees going through the roof. And you can actually depend on the protocol to scale up to meet your needs, as opposed to having to resort to some layer 2 strategy later on and then hoping that it works.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say it's liquidity and awareness are two major reasons for going down this path. Liquidity is number one by far, but still, this still is crypto. This still is a retail-driven market in many ways, which means it's hype-driven in many ways. And in order, the awareness is needed, obviously, to prove that something's scalable. Well, you need awareness as well. You can say you're scalable, but bringing in the liquidity that you need to scale and having the awareness, which allows you to scale, are two very important factors to actually prove scalability. So, and what better way than going after or bridging with the most used protocol when it comes to smart contracts and the like, which is Ether. At least today, it's Ether. We'll see what happens tomorrow and the day after, but obviously today it still is and remains to be Ether. That is where the liquidity lies. Bitcoin and Ether eat up probably collectively something like 75 to 80% of all liquidity that exists within crypto. So that is where the liquidity is by far. Great. I think we've done. Well, I think Will did a good job. I just kind of chimed in afterward, but I think collectively we did a decent job about explaining more or less why we're here. But I think today's really about asking questions. So we want to give you guys ample time to be able to do that. So I'm going to start to filter through. I might pop up a few questions here that are one-word answers, but so what? I think everybody deserves a bit of time in the sun, so to speak. So this one's a pretty broad-ranged. It's a bit of a broad-range question, but is Kadena really worth what? I don't know. I'm assuming it meant to say, is it really worth it? We can tackle that question from a million different angles. I think we've already tackled some of it. I don't know. Will, you want to try to tackle that one? I
got a good one for this. So when Satoshi built Bitcoin, it was supposed to be digital cash, and he picked up this flag and he carried it really far forward, and it didn't make it to digital cash. It made it to digital gold, which is incredible and is unprecedented in pretty much all of human history for just maybe one or maybe a team of people, maybe who knows, but an anonymous individual revolutionizing what it means to have an asset, to be money. And that flag didn't make it all the way, though. And the reason it didn't make it all the way is because it just couldn't scale. And there are cultural reasons for this, because there are options. Bitcoin could adopt a chain web implementation and actually scale up Bitcoin. But because of cultural reasons, they just won't. And that's fine. It is digital gold. Having a Swiss bank in your pocket is amazing. But is it worth it for Kadena, to exist and to do what it's doing? Yeah, because we're walking to the edge of what Satoshi did in his vision, and we're picking up the flag and we're saying we have a path forward, and we're going to see if we can make it all the way to digital cash, because we figured out how to actually scale the base protocol, and we figured out a better way than having UTXOs, so you can really have programmable money that doesn't have all of the problems that are associated with Ethereum. Which I don't know if many people have tried programming in Ethereum. I tried for 3 or 4 months this summer, and I ran away screaming with a mild mental breakdown. Just like, I can't imagine writing a contract and then deploying it and then trusting it with $1 billion of flow possibly. It's just, I just couldn't do it. So instead, we have both a safe protocol for actually writing these things in a way that you can trust and really rely on, but also it's really about picking up this flag. And that's what makes Kadena worth it. Because at the end of the day, it's an experiment. We're seeing if we can make a protocol that doesn't have gas that functions as a fee for miners. Instead, we can just have long emissions, and that pays the miners. Have the gas fee be just for spam avoidance, and then have this playground that anyone can come and deploy, into this effectively this giant Lisp machine in the sky, and interact in a financial way. So yeah, I think Kadena is worth it.
Yeah, I would echo every one of those comments. I would agree that. I mean, people disagree on what Bitcoin is, but I think we can all agree on what Bitcoin changed, or what it started a massive change into how just the financial markets work in general. And I would say from an access point, it was the biggest change that Bitcoin kind of catalyzed, was the fact that most people don't have access to opportunities in finance. Bitcoin changed that, started that change. And I think things like Kadena are what's going to usher in that new age of change, because you can't bring access to everyone if you can't scale to service everyone. And Bitcoin is simply not scalable enough to bring an opportunity. And I'm not talking about an opportunity of buying an asset and it appreciates in value per se. I'm talking about the ability to interact with a protocol that allows you to do a myriad of different things in finance, but one that you can actually use, meaning that's scalable. It's like the difference between the original analog cell phone. Anybody? Maybe I was old enough for one of these, but the M100 Motorola, this thing was like this big. It was a flip phone. This thing flipped. It worked really well. You could actually make a phone call in tunnels, which you can't do nowadays. But you definitely couldn't access the internet on it. You couldn't order food on it. You couldn't do all these great things that we kind of take for granted today. So it's kind of like Bitcoin is the pioneer, but lots of limitations. And I think Kadena is paving the way to take away a lot of those limitations. And as we progress over time, there's going to be lots of different services that come out that kind of find their nuanced little piece of the puzzle that they can solve. I think Kadena solves a lot of them, and that's amazing. So definitely worth it in my book as well. So here's just your you got to throw this one out. Buy the dip, great. Not much of a dip, but have in. All right, I'm going to try to go through most of these price-related questions, but KDA is the next Bitcoin. Okay, kind of a statement, not a question, but let's see.
I got a question.
Yeah.
When is Wrapped launching?
Well, that one's coming. I'm sure that one's coming, but we can answer that one now. Here's this guy just asked another question. How? Well, I think you answered the how. I guess he asked, why is it worth it? How is it worth it? I think we kind of covered both of those. So when is a good question. WEN, of course. You want to say, you want to, you can break it. You're the guest, man. You go ahead. You can
so we were just talking about it. We're setting it for Wednesday. What is the date on Wednesday? I don't have my calendar up in front of me.
Jesus, come on, man. Tough question.
I know. I just ruined it. Wednesday, the 24th.
When is Wednesday? Christ, it's the 24th, actually.
Yes.
The 24th of November would be next Wednesday. So yeah, I mean, I think we're going to hit that date. One Wednesday, you're going to be able to buy, sell, move around, withdraw, deposit, all that great stuff. Wrapped KDA, along obviously with KDA, which has been available on CoinMetro since, well, I think before anywhere else.
And you guys still have the best integration by far.
Yeah, well, we did integrate all 20 chains right from the get-go. We didn't do the old let's integrate one chain, not tell anybody what chain that is, because why would we do that? Yeah, absolutely. So I expect we'll have a good integration. We actually initially were talking about just basically having a basic integration where you could choose when you made a withdrawal whether you wanted to withdraw Wrapped KDA or KDA. However, We've seen other companies do that and do it, I would say, not in the right way, where people made mistakes. And thus, we're trying to send a wrapped asset to a exchange or to a wallet system that doesn't actually accept it. And then obviously you run into issues where those counterparties basically say, "Oh, sorry, you know, your Wrapped KDA is lost," which it's not, and they just don't want to, you know, find it.
It just sucks.
Yeah, yeah. So rather than doing it that way, I think we're going to do a little more holistic integration, which is why I know the last time we talked, we initially talked about, I think, the second week in November. But because we wanted to make these changes, we've had to extend it a bit, not much, but a bit, to make sure that it's more of a holistic integration, so that we don't want our clients to face those issues where they end up having, you know, some counterparty tell them that their assets aren't available.
No, absolutely not. And that's a theme with Kadena too, where like we go slower and make sure that we do it right, even if it means that we don't hit the market like first. It's important. These things build up slowly, and getting it right matters. So
I think it's like the Apple versus Microsoft argument. You know, I mean, historically, maybe not so much nowadays, but everybody, again, I'm old, so I have these references that nobody else can even relate to. But there were these commercials for Apple and Microsoft back in the early 2000s, I think, where like the Apple guy was kind of this cool, smooth talking dude, and then the Microsoft guy was a geek. You know, and generally the geek was quick because, you know, he's pounding out stuff on his keyboard, but most of it broke every time. You know, that Microsoft, you know, anybody try Windows Me? Yeah, absolutely. No. If you haven't, find a simulator of Windows Me. Just give it a shot.
Or just go get a blue screen and just look at it.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure you throw a few words up there like your computer's broken inside that blue screen to give a real good effect. But yeah, that was Windows ME, and they QA tested that. Of course, you've never seen that with Apple usually. I mean, because Apple actually waits to see what the reaction is from a new product from everyone else, and then releases their own version of it. Usually historically now to quite a lot of fanfare. So I usually like to say we're more Apple than Microsoft. So
That's it.
Yeah. Awesome. So here's a prediction. Coinbase soon. Be ready. All right. It's not from me or Will, by the way, but Marzio is saying Coinbase soon. So there you go. Let's see. You know, there's a lot of questions up here. I'm trying to find a juicy one. We need a good one. Everybody's talking about how excited they are about price movement.
Guys, I was at the SEC. I don't talk about price, and Kadena in general doesn't talk about price.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's just not what we do.
Yeah. All right, this is a statement again, but I'll throw it up there just in case somebody's coming in now. Roland read the white paper, so congratulations, Roland, for reading the white paper. That's amazing. KDA is the biggest thing since BTC was invented. It's like BTC2 turbo in cooler 4x4. I think
it's at least a twin turbo.
At least. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would 4x4. I guess is this an amalgamation of like cars and computer software, or is there a 4x4 analogy with?
No, 4x4 is just, you know, four-wheel drive, except that.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the car, but then, I pick because I was thinking like intercooler might have been, you know, like a nice fan inside of your CPU or something.
I mean, water cooled, but yeah, no, that would be a nice car.
Yeah, but twin turbo though. Let's add the twin in there. Come on, Roland. I thought you read the white paper, dude. What are you doing? I mean, come on. It's like on page 3. It's really small print though. You gotta take the magnifying glass out. Look towards the bottom right. You'll see it. All right, another pretty impressive, crazy scaling capacity with lower resource requirement. Definitely one of the things that, again, that kind of interested me when I first read up on Kadena. Proof of work, I think, you know, the proof of stake, in my mind, goes directly against kind of the initial idea of Bitcoin, in that the premise is I think a lot about access and also about kind of diminishing the ability for one large central, or, you know, let's say rich people to control the financial market. Let's dumb it down a bit. And that means if you have more, you control more. And that's exactly what proof of stake is. That doesn't mean proof of stake doesn't have its good qualities. It does. But if we're talking about, I think, and Will can talk about more about this, but if we're talking specifically about security, proof of work wins. And I think if we're talking about this idea about just changing financial markets for the better, I think proof of work wins. Yes, you can kind of equate this to, you can buy more miners if you have more money, and that's true. But still, there's a lot more, I think, intricities inside of proof of work that allow it to be more of a probably fair system in many aspects than proof of stake is in general.
Yeah, I generally I think about proof of stake a lot of times, at least the way that it's gone, especially with the Genesis block insiders having so much voting power effectively perpetually, that it reminds me a bit of feudalism. So neo-feudalism, sort of, where it's the landed aristocracy that get kind of like crowned, and they're the lords. And if you want land, you have to buy it from them. And as a class, they're never going to give you enough for you to make a real difference. And if you weren't there from the beginning, then, well, sorry, you're not a noble bloodline, and you don't really get a say. The nice part is that, you know, with proof of work, the miners don't get to like directly vote on, you know, proposals. And I mean, Bitcoin has had this cultural problem of the miners fighting with the devs over stuff and fighting with the community. And I just feel that that is an alignment issue, which we talk about in the white paper, of, you know, miners, users, and like the foundation, the devs should be aligned. And the problem comes around, you know, really just scalability. Like if you can get that to work, then everyone can be happy. And then it's just, okay, well, how do we advance the platform? And the coolest part of Chainweb and, you know, the way that Kadena scales is that 99% of the energy used for proof of work goes into hashing, which means that maybe 1% is getting used for the entire rest of the network. So, you know, a 20 chain node, you know, that consumes probably less than 1%, like, you know, relatively speaking, it's like 1%. So when we go to 50 chains, as congestion increases and the gas fees start to go up, it's like, all right, well, you got adoption, so let's give us more capacity. The 99% of the energy stays the same. You just use it over more blocks. So you effectively get to scale for free. And as the thing runs, it gets more efficient. And that's just tremendous that we can expand it without having to go to the miners and, you know, beg them for, hey, we need more capacity. So 99% of your effort is already going into mining. And maybe it's one more server that you need to run, maybe it's two. But relative to the ASICs that you have, you don't care. Not really. And that's just the beautiful part of it. If you can scale without making the miners angry, making users angry, having the devs, you know, have to figure out how to get the two to, you know, play nice with each other. And there's just this hostility towards miners that I don't get. Where like Ethereum's just burning their gas now. It's just a giant middle finger to the miners. You know, give us your tired and your poor and your oppressed miners. Like, come to Kadena. Yeah. We love our miners. We love ASICs. We love our users, and we love working on the platform. Like, we don't need to have this fight.
Yeah. Plus, scalability without more resources means Greta Thunberg won't be knocking on your door one day. That's good.
Global warming is a whole different problem. That's just that is just a governmental. It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, we could do a whole other AMA on that. But at least she's not knocking on your door, I think, is probably good. It's good. I wouldn't want her knocking on mine, to be honest.
And she might. I live in Stockholm.
Well, yeah, move. Okay. So I'll take this. This is one for me. Not necessarily price related, so we won't say, but look forward to this AMA. Well, here we are. Why do you think KDA price is often 3 to 5% cheaper on CoinMetro compared to other exchanges? So just so everybody remembers, the term OTC, used really wrong in crypto all the time. It means over the counter. The entire market of crypto is OTC. What that actually means is there's no centralized pricing authority, right? There's not, for instance, if you're going to trade on a stock, you're going to buy Tesla stock, right, on the NASDAQ in the US. If you buy that from a broker in Stockholm, or you buy it from a broker in South Africa, or you buy it from a broker, you are going to pay the same price, plus or minus whatever commissions, because the price is coming from NASDAQ. They're the listing, they're the listing authority. They provide that centralized price out to all brokers. That doesn't happen in crypto. Crypto, like FX, for example, is an OTC market. Every individual order book is different. This order book is different from that order book, which is different from that order book. Yes, some of those may share liquidity, which may cause the order books to be similar, but theoretically, they should never be the same in an OTC market. They should be similar, but not the same. So one of the reasons why price may fluctuate differently on CoinMetro is you may have substantially higher volumes at another exchange. The normal circumstance of how order books become normalized is arbitrage. So clients will move from one platform to another because there's either a better price, a lower price to buy, or a higher price to sell, and they will move volume over to those exchanges or those brokers or whatever, and that will normalize price over time. So the more volumes that happen on CoinMetro, the more equalized you're going to start to see that price. But as volumes are different, let's say, I've seen volumes on KuCoin hit 300 million. Now, we can debate for 6 days about whether that's real volume or not, but still, there's a substantial amount of volume that happens on that exchange versus the volume that happens with us. So by that same theory, you are going to see a difference in price, whether it's higher or lower. Over time, though, you'll start to see those prices normalize. So that's an arbitrage opportunity. So have at it. Buy a CoinMetro, sell a KuCoin. Amazing. If you're a trader. If you're not a trader, by the way, don't do that. You're just going to lead yourself down a bad path. But if you know what arbitrage is and you are a trader, it's just a great opportunity to assist the market in normalizing price and make some money while doing it. Okay, let's see. I guess a lot of these came in before we even started talking. All right, so somebody did put in when, but we answered that one already. We'll answer it again. It is next Wednesday, which I believe 24th, I think we said, 24th of November, Wrapped KDA on CoinMetro. Okay, let's see. So here's another one. I think we touched on this a bit, but might as well try again. We've had some more people join in the last couple of minutes. Young asking, very interested in this question of Phoenix. I guess Phoenix asked a question that Young is now typing out for him. What will be the use cases for WKDA? So we touched on it a bit, but Will, if you want to touch on it again, use cases for WKDA.
I think there are two main ones. One is getting access to the AMMs that are operating on top of Ethereum. So people being able to actually go and trade KDA on top of Uniswap and the like. And the other is that by putting it into Wrapped KDA, we get access to all of the integrations for ERC20s, which are just across the board. So all of your wallets will be able to hold it. Other exchanges that just automatically integrate with ERC20s or do it very quickly would be able to also list it. So it's about access. Of course, longer term, we're going to be, there's my dog going.
He's excited about all the use cases for Wrapped KDA is what it is.
Yeah. So those are the two. Wow, those are the two primary ones. Yeah.
All right. Well, the dog is very excited for good reason, because I think those are two. We already talked about awareness and liquidity. Both of those things kind of go in unison. To be honest, you need liquidity to scale, because without it, it's harder to scale, and you obviously need awareness to actually eat up that liquidity. So both of those things go hand in hand, and I think that's one of the main. That might not be a use case, but it's one of the main reasons to push WKDA out there. And yes, use cases is that you can then interact with a lot of other DeFi platforms. You can interact with a lot of other conduits, whether those be exchanges, wallets, etc. Just like Will mentioned. But his dog is really excited about that, so he's probably waiting. He's probably got like a wallet. He's got a wallet he can't put his KDA in, and he's just really upset about it. So cool. I'm sure there's more dogs out there in the same position.
And my last point is that it really helps with the transition of DeFi and smart contract applications to a scalable platform, so that in this intermediate period, people can just get involved without having to go entirely into the ecosystem. So it can be a much more gentle transition.
It's interoperability. Yeah, I mean that's obviously where everybody wants to head, knowing that there's going to be some protocol war at some point, and there's going to be lots of different nuanced applications on each individual protocol. So the ability to hop between them and interoperate between them is needed 100%. Hoo Me Banana, amazing name. Is it possible to wrap any ERC20 token so that it transfers onto Kadena's chain in order to significantly reduce the fees incurred, unlike ETH's network currently?
So the initial bridge, I don't think has that within its scope. Maybe longer term, but we haven't really identified a lot of actual market demand for generically moving large value of tokens, of just kind of random tokens, onto other platforms. People talk about it that, oh, you need this, but in practice, it's usually larger people that are moving large sums, and it's usually just a few assets, more like the ones that are more liquid. That being said, I have been talking with Flux, and they're done by Zelcore. They do a number of our different programs. They run the incentivized node program so that you can run a full node and receive KDA for it. They do bonding and relay related stuff too. And we've been talking more and more about them putting together a decentralized bridge that operates through their network, because they're a proof of stake, proof of work. Think of them like a decentralized Amazon type of thing. And they've been very useful for KDA, and we've enjoyed working with them for the past 2 years. And they have, I believe, a bridge to Ethereum already from their network. and they have a bridge to Kadena already from their network. So I've been pointing out that, guys, why don't you just link these things together and then make a bridge that goes, through, and you'll be able to continue, being able to draft off of, how Kadena has been doing and grow with us. I mean, if we're the next settlement layer, we're the settlement layer of the future, that might make you the Amazon of the future. And this is all good with all of us. We don't want to do what you do. Like, we're doing what we're doing and we're good at it. And you guys are doing what you're doing and you're good at it. So this makes sense to me. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see more stuff coming out from the Zelcore community of actually doing these more just generic bridging applications to be able to bring stuff over and to also get other people involved, probably in the Flux network along the way, which I see as just the benefit. Being able to hook up these networks is a good thing, and Kadena is very easy to plug into. The reason we don't have something for this generic kind of bridge, is that it's so hard and dangerous to write the Ethereum side of the contract in a way that doesn't make you, that doesn't have regulatory problems or that doesn't get hacked. And it's just a huge mess.
Absolutely. Well, definitely a shout out to the guys at Flux and Zelcore. We enjoyed working with them as well. And I think absolutely whatever happens between that partnership between Kadena and Flux, I think we would definitely enjoy jumping in and providing some assistance where we can as well. You made a good point that everybody kind of focuses on what they do well. None of us are competing in any way, shape, or form, but we all have key pieces of the ecosystem that are required to make anything like this work. Anyways, that's what makes it an amazing partnership. And I think between the three of us, we're going to come up with some amazing things in the future. I think this is just the beginning. Wrapped KDA, obviously, I had a discussion internally the other day about kind of what the future of ETH looks like versus like the future of Kadena in terms of, if you have a system that the more volumes it does, the more it costs, and substantially more ETH, then, if gas fees remain high, then it kind of seems to me that large scale transactions may remain on ETH, meaning one bank transfers assets to another bank or one institution to another institution. If they have to pay 1,000 euros to do that, but they already integrated into a system and spent millions and millions doing it, they may be okay with doing that if they feel it provides the security and they're not so concerned about the fee per se. But when it comes to the rest of the world will look for opportunities to be able to use systems where they can move assets cheaply, quickly, and of course cross-chain as well. Absolutely. So I think there's a possible future where small scale transactions, people will maybe want to take assets if they acquire an asset on the ETH chain, maybe $100 worth of an asset, let's say, and it costs them $400 to move it. It may make a lot of sense for them to have the ability to be able to bridge that onto Kadena and move it on Kadena rather than moving it on ETH. And whoever provides that service, somebody like Flux, for example, or sorry, somebody like not Flux, but Zelcore, would be able to do one batch transaction on ETH later on to be able to, put those assets or get those assets into something more liquid, and thus be able to make money on these smaller transactions by providing a bridge into something like Kadena. So yeah, there's definitely lots of possibilities, and I think both arguments make sense. Whether institutions are more cost conscious and they're making big liquid transactions cross chain, but there's also an argument that smaller transactions would also need to go cross chain for the same reasons, really.
Yeah, absolutely. In the future, absolutely. I don't quite think we're quite there yet.
Yeah. I wouldn't
next
say
year.
Yeah. So this is, I think, a follow-up. Oh no, this is somebody else actually. Matt, in the white paper, you state that Pact allows cross-chain currency transfers. This has something to do with transaction atomicity. I'm going to pronounce that wrong. I don't even know.
Atomicity. Yeah.
Ability to pull from oracles and fail gracefully. Could you say more?
Sure. So there's a few different ways to go about this. The main thing is that Pact has inside of it these things called pacts. They are coroutines. These are multi-step functions, so that span the transactions. So each step has to be in a separate transaction, or effectively has to be in a separate transaction, and it also has rollback characteristics of if, say, you want to do escrow is a good example. There can be a timeout on the escrow so that if the counterparty decides that they actually don't want to go through with the transaction, then after a certain period of time, you can roll it back and regain whatever you've escrowed. But this allows for generic things like talking with oracles, but it also is a very easy way of doing cross-chain things closer to atomic swaps. Atomic swaps are kind of a dirty word right now. I think that they're probably getting a bit better because they're a lot safer than decentralized bridges, which were all the rage over the summer, and then a bunch of them got hacked to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. So I think that atomic swaps are probably going to be coming back into vogue just because they don't get hacked. Like, you do a swap and that's it. It's in your wallet, it's in their wallet, and you're done. So right now, we could, anyone actually could go and code up a atomic swap between, I don't know if we have the support for Bitcoin SPV validation built in yet, but I know that we have it for Ethereum and we have the relay. So it's actually just a little bit of code that would be needed to start doing atomic swaps between Kadena and Ethereum. And this is one of the potential visions of where Wrapped goes, is that Wrapped is the actual bridge. And then for smaller individuals, we can, there can be set up a effectively like an order book for doing swaps between chains. So if someone has Wrapped KDA or KDA and they want to go the other way. And the cool part is, because of these coroutines, you can actually do all the logic on the path side. So on the Kadena side, you don't need to code any Solidity. It's just that, the first step is that I lock up the Kadena side and I specify the other side of the transaction, which would be the Ethereum transaction. The other side goes and does the transaction and then gets a proof and then submits that proof to the second step of the transaction on the Kadena side, and then the transaction completes. And all of this is trustless. It's all time locked. It's exactly the way that most people, I think that this stuff should work. And it's really simple and it's really clear and it's really safe. So that can also work for oracles. And this whole fail gracefully thing is the ability for a coroutine to roll itself back. One of the cool parts of Pact and Kadena is that, so Bitcoin had addresses and Ethereum had two different types of addresses, both user and contract. And Kadena has three. We have user, we have contract, and we also have pact addresses. So these are specific addresses that can only be worked with inside of a pact. It's a capability thing, and it allows for super safe escrow. It's not logical escrow. It's actually baked into the fundamentals, like fundamentally supported by the contract language itself. So you don't even have to worry about it.
Cool. It's a great explanation. And my terrible pronunciation of atomicity didn't affect it at all. So that's good. All right, let's move on to, let's see. I just had one. Okay. Let's see if I can make heads or tails of this one. Does Kadena burn any coins anywhere? Because, well, I don't even know. Well, okay. Because 1 billion is too much.
Yeah, I know how to answer this one. So there's a few different points here. So there's 1 billion coins market cap for total coins that'll ever be in circulation. 70% of that goes to miners, and so it's 700 million coins. But they come out of lockup over a very slow emission schedule. It's 120 years plus. I think it might actually be 134. And the reason for that is that we never wanted miners to be demanding higher gas fees to make money off of users. We wanted miners to always be happy with the emission schedule. And our miners are incredibly, incredibly happy right now. I think we're the most profitable cryptocurrency mine right now. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, we have this super long emission schedule. And eventually, it caps out. But people ask what happens in 120 years when it ends. And I tell them, well, I don't know, but we'll figure it out when we get there, because it means we solve mortality and we solve global warming. And we're in just a different world at that point. So with Canina, you never have to worry about, with Bitcoin, the rate of emissions keeps dropping because it goes by half every couple of years, I think it is. And eventually that's going to go to an amount that's too low, and it's going to be completely fee driven. And it looks like that's going to work for Bitcoin, but when we built Kadena, there was no guarantee that was actually going to be functional. Bitcoin at $60,000 wasn't a guarantee back then. I think Bitcoin was at maybe $2,000 or $3,000 at that point. And when it drops to much lower rates, people are like, well, does it work anymore? We don't know. So instead, we just have this very long rate. We've only burned coins once, and we burned 10 million right at launch. There's some details around that, but outside of that, no, we don't burn coins. We don't bump. We don't dump. No, we don't do any of that.
Yeah, those tokens are there on an emission schedule as described, to support the next 120 years of mining. They're not sitting in a wallet somewhere that can be dumped on market.
Nope.
All right. This is actually not really a CoinMetro question, but Somebody asking when Kadena bonding will open again. So we CoinMetro has something we call Kadena staking, which is kind of a dumbed down version of bonding, simply because we take all the, between us and our partners, take on the heavy lifting of actually doing everything that needs to be done in order to bond the tokens, and we simply provide a rate of reward back to the client. We reopened it simply to realign. We wanted to bring a few more people in because people were asking and asking and asking. Bonding has not reopened. It did not reopen. We simply reopened staking and readjusted the reward schedule based on a few factors. One, because we were running it at a loss. We did that initially because we wanted to get as many people in as we possibly could, and we wanted to provide a decent rate of reward back to those people that were supporting that ecosystem and that product. Now we've done a readjustment and we opened it back, but it filled out. I think we had 750,000 possible Kadena we could take in, and it was filled in minutes. So now Kadena staking at CoinMetro will reopen as soon as that first bridge goes live and bonding reopens on the Kadena side. So that's more of a Kadena related question, I think, rather than a CoinMetro one.
Yeah, and in next year, I suspect we're going to be seeing a number of apps launching that are going to be offering staking and bonding rewards, just like on Ethereum, where you don't stake Ethereum. At least you can stake Ethereum into that black hole that is ETH 1.5, and eventually it'll launch and you'll get access to it. But until then, you don't stake your coins. So you put them into other things, put them into apps. And we expect the same thing for Kadena, because we just don't have a need. Staking doesn't work with proof of work or proof of work. So there's no native staking notion. And yeah, we're fine with that. We think it also provides a lot of staking and bonding demand for apps that are going to launch on the network, which is a good thing for the community. It's a good thing for the developers. It's a good thing all around, we believe. And I think next year we're going to be seeing a lot of opportunities for people to be making significant returns as this virgin territory of this 20 chain scaled proof of work with this ironclad smart contract language really starts to see developers actually deploying apps, because we're getting a lot of demand for people who are starting and being like, hey, can I get some help? What are the resources? Where should I be looking? Do you want to work with us on this? And we're like, yes, we want to work with everyone on this. Yes, here are the resources. And no, we don't want to run any of these things ourselves. We will be very vehement in our both financial and reputational support for whatever you're doing. And just tell us where we can help, because we want you to be successful. We're running the protocol and we are very happy with that. We get to work on a giant list machine in the sky and do some really cool things with it. And we totally want everyone to be showing up and building out next gen apps that they've wanted to build out in Ethereum, but it was either too unsafe or it was just too expensive.
Yeah. Well, definitely expensive for sure. There might have been some other reasons, but definitely being expensive was definitely one of them. Filtering through, there's a lot of wins in here. I see a lot of. I'm trying to filtering through the wins. Okay, I think we already covered that question. Okay, here's so Bill Gates Potato is asking what DeFi applications are running on KDA or Kadena.
So right now there's Kadena Swap, I believe, that is running, and that is going to quickly be subsumed by CADEX, which launches effectively after Wrapped launches. I haven't actually met the CADEX team in person yet. I'm looking forward to meeting them in Miami at DecentralCon in December, because they're going to be there. I've just heard great things about them. There are a few other NFT products that I think are running right now. I don't know the names off the top of my head. And we're also working on our own NFT, but also this one is a mint to marketplace. And you actually can design the entire trading policy for the NFT when you go and mint the NFT, so that you can make sure that royalties are getting paid back, or that transactions are taking place in such a way they can be tracked, so that we know where everything is going. Or you can turn off all of this stuff and it can just be a normal NFT. So it's a much more flexible platform that we're still building the UI for, because it's a little bit tricky to represent the marketplace minting aspect of an NFT. Normal NFTs, they're just like tokens. It's easy. But when you actually have to describe the economic policy of how the NFT trades, it's a little bit more involved. So it's taken a little more time than we thought that it would.
Sounds like it's worth it, though. Time spent for sure, because
that would be real cool once it runs.
Absolutely. We should chat after we get out of here one of these days about NFTs, because we have a few ideas about how we would want to. And I'm sure if you guys are already going down that path, maybe we just jump on for the ride.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, we already answered this one. Tobias looks pretty happy in his photo. Are you planning any exchange listings soon?
All right, so here's the skinny on exchange listings. There are NDAs. If we talk about it, then we risk getting an exchange listing. So we can't talk about it. And that involves also not talking about it in a certain way that gives people expectations. So the answer is always no comment, or as I've taken to just using it, the capybara sticker that has a when over it. Because no, we can't talk about it. And we're not gonna be able to talk about it until it gets announced. Yeah. You know, there's also a PR campaign that's involved with actual listings. So we don't want to ruin that by telling randos on Telegram. But I understand why everyone is interested. Yes, we have incredibly large, we've had, last couple of weeks, we had incredibly large volumes for only being on KuCoin. No, you're not the only one that noticed. We noticed. Pretty much everyone else noticed. But no, we can't talk about it.
Yeah,
sorry. I really am sorry. I wish that we could. I wish that we could. We can't.
Yeah. What I would add is just this: if you're an exchange and you see volumes and you see a token enter the top 100, it goes on your radar. So remember that in this industry, you don't need permission to list anything.
Yep.
So
Crypto.com just showed up. We had no idea they were listing, and they just listed.
Yeah, many exchanges just have, they have a rule set that says top 100, top 50, top 25, whatever their rule is, or sees this much volume on a competitive exchange for more than X days or whatever. As soon as that happens, you're already kind of on a list, regardless if you're pursuing it or not. That's OTC. That's how a decentralized OTC market works. Yeah. So, I mean, I would say you don't need to plan exchange listings. I mean, you can, but generally speaking, they're just going to come. I mean, there's been so much. If you look at Twitter, you look at the KDA as a trending term, or as Kadena, it is trending, and it's growing and growing in strength, which means more people are going to see it. The more people that see it, it's inevitable that it will happen, whether or not there is any plans to do so. Mm-hmm. Let's see. What use cases are you most excited about with Wrapped KDA? It's from Jameson.
I think just giving people the ability to get Kadena into Uniswap. Really, just being able to get it on the into the Ethereum ecosystem, being able to hold it in the wallets that you have, and being able to interact with Uniswap and the other DeFi protocols. I think it's just cool. There's a lot of toys that you get to play with KDA just by virtue of Wrapped KDA launching.
Absolutely. All right, here's a question. This is definitely from Will. What is the difference between Kuro and L2 from another chain?
So layer 2 is whatever. The best way that I can describe layer 2 is that layer 1 is where the actual main ledger transactions go, and layer 2 is where a bunch of other stuff happens, and then they're effectively compressed and settled on to layer 1. Now, there's a few different ways of doing that. One is zero knowledge proofs. Ethereum uses this a fair bit now, where you do a bunch of stuff in a zero knowledge ball of cryptography, and then it settles onto the main chain, and it settles out in nets. Let me switch my phone off because this is making noise. And another way of doing it is you have a side chain. So if you think about Cosmos, they have their main kind of Atom ledger, and then they have other things that are running Tendermint, and they can link using IBC to go across. And it's kind of like an application-specific blockchain. And those have their use cases, especially things that need, fast finality is one of these terms that gets thrown around a lot of, like, here's the killer app of proof of stake. And I say it's like, yeah, like fast finality is very useful, but we're talking about settlement versus trading. Trading and settlement are very different. Like, trading needs fast finality, and trading needs even lower transaction times and settlement times transaction times than anything on the market can do right now. Just, and the lower you can go, the better when it comes to trading. The faster you can go. It's what high frequency trading is all about. But settlement is T+3 in a lot of cases. And for money markets, for Visa or something, I think it's 3 months before you actually have finality around a transaction. because you can do clawbacks and all this other stuff. So Kadena's settlement time is, I think, around like 2 minutes right now. And that's for settlement finality. And as we scale up the network, it'll stay right around there. Maybe it'll go down a little bit. Maybe it'll go up a little bit, but it'll stay right about there. So Coro is effectively like our Tendermint. It was actually the first blockchain that we built because we started as an enterprise chain company. It is the evolution of Juno, which was JP Morgan's first blockchain, which we rolled out to, I think, 10,000 clients back at JP Morgan during a demo or during a dev period. And it actually comes from this project called Tangaroa, which was a Stanford grad student's research project taking Wrapped and hardening it into a Byzantine fault tolerant Wrapped. I then found that, picked it up, threw a scheme on it, and then fixed some of the bugs in its protocol and turned that into Juno. And then we left and fixed other bugs in it and then put Pact on top of it. And that was Coro. So it runs at about, I think it's 5 to 10,000 transactions a second. It was noteworthy for being able to have 500 to 1,000 validating nodes as it ran back then, which was crazy because it was 4 years ago. Now that's much more standard and people have cracked the nut that we cracked back then. But we decided, because we figured out Chainweb and how to scale proof of work, we went with proof of work. So Coro is one of our layer 2 solutions. You could also pretty quickly implement a Taproot-like thing on top of Pact. It wouldn't really be much code. You could also probably do a Lightning network on top of Pact. But the important thing is that all layer 2 solutions are always compatible with all layer 1 based protocols, or at least all smart contract protocols. And there's no special sauce that, this only works with Ethereum or it only works with Avalanche. No, like any layer 2 solution works with any layer 1 solution, so long as that layer 1 solution is has moderately complex smart contracts, which Kadena does.
Absolutely. We're actually getting some decent questions now, but unfortunately we're pretty close. I'm going to try to pop a few up that I think this one's interesting. I think a lot of people probably have this question floating around in their minds. So how do you convince someone comfortable using a chain like Solana, for example, to switch over to Kadena?
I'd say wait until the gas fees go up, because Solana says a lot about their throughput and they're going to get congested like every other single chain blockchain does. And so my strategy for that one is wait, and it'll make itself pretty clear pretty fast. I'm thinking probably 6 to 9 months. Yep,
absolutely. So here's another decent one. What makes the scalability better than DAG type platforms? They don't suffer single chain issues either, correct? Right?
So DAGs are hard to describe. DAGs make for really good demos. I can write a single chain blockchain that runs on a DAG, or that uses a DAG, and get a performance benchmark test that shows 1 million transactions a second. It would be maybe like a week's worth of work to put it together. The problem is that DAGs have so finance tried to use DAGs back in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And they have a problem which is called Amdahl's law, which is from computer science. And it basically says that for even, if you have an infinitely parallelizable computing substrate, the amount of time you spend doing sequential syncs will actually limit whatever performance gain you can get from doing things in parallel. So even if you could be infinitely parallel, you can actually only be, and Amdahl's law says, between, usually it's like 5 and 10x what a single computing substrate would do. So what this basically means is that a single chain is like is a single computing substrate. And a DAG allows you to do multiple things at once. But a DAG is only as fast as it is, you can think of it like width. It's only as fast as it is wide, how many parallel things it can do. And the problem that you run into with trying to use a DAG for a production use case where events are user-driven and they're not demo-driven is that the more related transactions are, the slower the DAG runs. So for instance, if everyone's using Uniswap, even though the DAG could technically do 1,000 transactions a second in parallel, it can actually only do 6, because every second or third transaction, it needs to sync with the state that is Uniswap. And then it comes to the other side of this, which is the small world problem that a lot of people have heard of, which is how are you going to connect 2 people in the world? And the question is like, how many jumps do you need to go between people that they know? And effectively, you can connect any 2 people in the world through about 6 or 7 jumps. because there are these super connecting nodes, these people that just know tons of people, or they know people way on the other side of the world. So every 2 people are connected by maybe 6 or 7 jumps. The same thing goes for user-driven transactions, where even if you're not using Uniswap, one of the people that is using the thing that you're also using, they're using Uniswap. So yes, you're not using Uniswap, but that thing isn't connected to someone else that is. So you end up with, in practice, a DAG will usually give you effectively 5x performance bump over a single chain blockchain, but that's it. And the problem is that you can't make it bigger by a configuration flag. You can't, like, there's nothing that the devs can do to make it faster. It's just it's a restriction because of the causality of events. If every 6 transaction is related to every other 6 transaction, then congratulations, you can do 6 things at once, but that's it. So that's why DAGs they're easy to do a demo, which makes them easy to fundraise around, and they're easy to implement. And we didn't go with them for Pact, even though we could have, because we already knew about this constraint. So yes, we could put a DAG in on every chain in Chainweb and go 5 times faster on every chain with significant engineering overhead for not that much gain. Instead, we just have a scalable platform, and we're going to have it be scalable, and we're just going to scale it up. And the nice part of scalable means you can scale without a limit. And a DAG is scalable by 5x, but that's it. So you get this finite speed bump, and then you're done.
Great explanation.
I hope that made sense. They're really hard to describe.
It was absolutely. I mean, I got it. But it was a great explanation, actually. I think the main takeaway there is, yeah, when you constantly need to sync parallel transactions, because obviously things that are happening over here, they don't know about it over here. There needs to be a sync every now and again so that the transactions continue in parallel. It's not the fact that what slows the network down is all those syncs that need to happen so that the data can remain in parallel. The more syncs, the slower the data. Theoretically 5 to maximum 10x. And obviously when you can just add on additional chains, like I've already mentioned, if you have 100,000 chains, well, you can 100,000x one chain's capacity. You're not limited to that scalability issue of syncing the data. Okay. Awesome. I think that was a great explanation, actually, on a very hard to answer question. So 1 point for Will. He gets a gold star. I'll make sure I put it on the wall. So I think we have time maybe for 1 or 2 more questions. So I'm going to, as Will's answering this one, I'm going to scroll through and see if I can find a good one to end on. But here's a decent one. What are the vulnerabilities, if any, when transferring coins between chains?
So between chains inside of Kadena on Chainweb?
I assume that's the question. Well, let's assume that's what it is.
So there aren't any vulnerabilities between doing a burn, some coins on chain 0 and transferring them to chain 1. The main thing to watch out for right now, and all of our partners are upgrading, so including exchanges and the wallet providers, is that there's someone who's running around trying to squat accounts on other chains. So you just have to watch out for, if you're doing a transfer of your coins to some other chain, that the account that you think you're transferring to is actually owned by you. This new account naming scheme that we have gets completely past this issue, because it works like really legacy blockchain accounts actually do, which is that it's a key. It's like 1 key per account, and you need to have that key to be able to interact with that account. The way that we launched Kadena, the account model that we had was freer, and we just didn't really suspect that someone was going to try to literally front run everything in the network. But most of the network at this point is upgraded to it. So besides this, very temporary thing to just watch out for, there aren't any risks between migrating or moving coins from one chain to another. Worst case, people generally, so long as you don't have an account being squatted on the other side, so it's always a good idea to maybe do a small test transfer just to make sure that it did work the way you thought it did. But that goes for literally everything in crypto. Like when you're doing this, like, yeah, you usually do a transfer, just make sure. But once you own the account on the other side, you don't have to worry about it. The worst thing that usually happens is that people do a transfer and it turns they don't have anything to pay the gas on the other side of the transaction on the other chain, and then they just get kind of stuck. There's a few ways to deal with this. You can use one of the gas stations that we have on all the chains, or you can just go into Telegram or Discord and just ask for help. And because anyone can pay for the gas to finish it, and the gas doesn't cost anything. So if someone's around, they'll usually just help you out and make sure that your coins actually arrive on the other chain.
Try that on Ether. Could you pay this $1,700 gas fee for me so I can get my $45 NFT? Another reason why Kadena is amazing. All right, let's finish up with this one. Just our friend Roland had a few other good questions today. Do you have any actual benchmarks that can be shared with us to prove the scalability and performance of Kadena? Good question.
So, I mean, the Coro app itself, I believe, has a benchmark built into it, so you can go and deploy it out. We usually run that benchmark on AWS, and that one runs between 5 and 10,000 a second. And then, yeah, I mean, for the performance tests on Chainweb and Kadena itself, I know that we had some from before, but it runs as expected. And the hard part with talking about throughput and scalability is that the market doesn't really define a lot of places don't really define a transaction as a transaction. So their transaction per second numbers are let's say 400,000, but actually it turns out it wasn't 400,000 transactions. It was 400,000 messages that got sent to the mempool, and the base actual blockchain was only doing 2,000 a second, and then bad stuff happened. So like there are these, it's a very difficult to just like talk about thing in crypto just because like I can't say infinite. I can't just be like, hey, we have a way to go from 20 chains. We started with 10 chains. We doubled our throughput to 20. We can do that to 50, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million, 10 million. Now I can't imagine us ever deploying a million chain network. It would just be huge. The node operation costs would be large, but maybe, I mean, if we're talking 2 decades from now and global settlements have moved on to Kadena, because we figured out how to scale a decentralized proof of work cryptocurrency, then maybe, because all the major players are going to be involved, and then at that point it makes sense. So the hard part when talking about it with Kadena is that you're like, yes, like right now we run 20 chains, but we could run 50 within a couple months if we saw the need to. Right now there's no need to. We're running at maybe like 10% capacity, maybe 20% capacity. But once we hit 50 to 60, then it's time to start thinking about it, and then we scale up to 50 chains. And then once that
you've already done one scale from 10 to 20.
And we've already done one. The watershed moment for Kadena is going to be next. I suspect it's next year. Doug thinks, our director of engineering thinks it's going to be a few years down the line, and we scale up to 50 chains because we're going to have so many people watching. Literally, the entire market is going to be watching us double the throughput or 2.5x the throughput of a base layer proof of work cryptocurrency that is congested, and the gas fees are starting to creep up, and see it over like double its throughput in production. And then that's the watershed moment that everyone's going to get it of, oh, that's what scalability means. This thing got clogged, the gas fees are going up. Now it's not clogged, the gas fees are back down. And they can do it again and again and again. This is the future.
Absolutely. Great way to end, I think. I have to say thank you for everybody for watching. Thanks for the great questions. There was a lot more. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to get to them all. I'm sure we'll do one of these things again at some point, hopefully talking about the next biggest and brightest new product to roll out from Kadena or in partnership with CoinMetro or Zelcore or who knows who. So stick around for that. Make sure if you've been watching, guys, give a thumbs up, support the community. Let us know that you like to see these things so we can do more of them. Thanks a lot, Will, for showing up and sitting down and answering all these really cool questions. And yeah, we will see you guys here next time, and have a great rest of your week. And I'm going to be having AMAs for the whole rest of the week. So you're going to see a lot of my face, unfortunately. But hopefully you'll see Will's as well soon too, on the next time we get together.
Thanks for having me. Great as always.
Cheers.